He called it controlled chaos. I called it a dumpster fire wearing a Rolex. The morning I knew something was really off, I was sitting in the green room at a local news station, slathering concealer under my eyes and trying to steady my breathing with sips of lukewarm conference room coffee. Our CEO, Brent Maddox, was pacing in front of a makeup mirror and talking to his reflection like he was auditioning to play God in a pharmaceutical commercial. "Want vision," he said, adjusting his $1,000 blazer. "They want disruption. Give the people a story." That was Brent, always high on buzzwords and the smell of his own cologne. A man so addicted to the spotlight, he probably kept a ring light in his panic room. I'd worked under him for almost 4 years, communications director for the fastest-growing tech firm in the state, which really just meant I was the professional arsonist responsible for putting out his PR fires with gasoline and a press release. You get good at spinning when you live in a tornado. But lately, even my gut, trained by decades in crisis management, had stopped digesting Brent's bullshit. His new energy wasn't just manic, it was desperate. Our last 3 product launches had bombed harder than a dad joke at a funeral. Internally, investor meetings had turned into PowerPoint seances, full of metrics that seemed conjured from beyond the grave. And during the last quarterly review, I caught him airbrushing a graph with Photoshop. He claimed the intern misformatted the Excel. I didn't argue, I just started screenshotting everything. "Look, I've smiled through lawsuits, buried scandal under stock prices, and finessed more NDAs than a divorce attorney in Beverly Hills. I know a sinking ship when I smell mold in the conference snacks." Brent had that kind of panicked charisma you only see in cult leaders when they realize the Kool-Aid's gone sour. And listen, before we go further, quick pause. If you're one of the 95% of folks who have been lurking through these wild corporate confessions without subscribing, come on. Help me hit my first 10,000. I swear, the betrayals get juicier, and the revenge gets colder with every click. Smash that little button like it's your micromanaging boss's ego. All right, back to hell. The final straw came on a Tuesday, because of course it did. I just walked out of a restructuring meeting, read. Brent fired 2 VPs and replaced them with LinkedIn influencers who thought KPI stood for Kale, Pilates, Instagram. As I passed the executive wing, I caught a slice of conversation through the slightly open conference door. Brent's voice, low and jittery. "If we don't fix those numbers before the SEC checks them, I swear, just shuffle the board notes again." No one reads the damn things anyway. I didn't breathe, didn't blink. Just kept walking like I hadn't heard a single syllable that rhymed with federal indictment. But inside, something twisted, quietly, like a switchblade opening. That night, I poured a glass of red, turned off my phone, opened a hidden folder on my personal drive called Insurance. Inside, a few redacted emails, some suspicious ledger entries I wasn't supposed to have access to, and a voice memo from a staffer who left abruptly last fall after family issues. The real reason? She'd reported Brent for unethical data practices and got escorted out before lunch. I started adding to it. This wasn't paranoia. This was pattern recognition. Don't survive in PR without learning to read between the silences. Brent had turned our firm into a cult of personality, his personality. The quarterly numbers didn't match the press releases. The new products demo was edited in post. One journalist from Tech Forward even reached out to me directly, asking if I felt safe. I replied with a professional smile emoji and blocked her. But I saved the message, just in case. Say communications people don't have souls. Maybe, but we do have receipts. And I was about to build the thickest goddamn paper trail you've ever seen. Not because I wanted to bring the place down, no, not yet. I just wanted to know I could, because something told me that day was coming. Fast. It started with a whisper, literally. Friday afternoon, post-lunch lull, the office smelled like microwave curry and capitalism. I was heading back to my corner glass coffin when I heard Brent's voice again, this time behind the frosted glass of a breakout room labeled Innovation Tank, which, ironically, had never produced a single useful idea, just hangovers and unpaid invoices. "If the SEC asks, we call it a forward-leaning restructuring, not manipulation," he hissed. "And you make damn sure those financials show growth, even if you have to reclassify the R&D spend again. Lay the audit, shuffle the numbers, just buy me until Q3, then silence." I kept walking, didn't flinch, just clutched my LaCroix tighter and prayed no one heard the way my heartbeat slammed against the can. See, this wasn't just another Brentism. He'd said wild crap before. He once called unionizing a mental health epidemic. But this wasn't performative garbage for the interns. This was planning. This was fear. And it had backup. By Monday, was pacing around the office barefoot. Yes, barefoot, telling the design team they needed to make the app feel more like enlightenment and less like code. When our CFO raised a mild concern about timelines, Brent called him a negativity anchor. When I asked what features were actually functional in the new prototype, he told me, dead serious, reality is subjective. Let marketing paint the vision. The product in question, wellness wearable called NeuroBand that was supposed to read your brainwaves and optimize your mood through neural feedback haptics. Translation: it vibrated when you were sad. That's it. It was just a glorified wrist toy that buzzed whenever you blinked too hard or checked your bank account. We'd staged a live demo at a tech summit the week prior. Brent insisted we show the new AI features. So we looped a pre-recorded UI video and prayed no one asked questions. Device itself never left the display case. By then, even the engineers had stopped correcting him. They just nodded and triple-checked their personal savings accounts. I began keeping my work laptop on a mirrored backup drive, created a burner email, set up cloud sync with end-to-end encryption. Not because I had a plan, but because every instinct I had told me this rocket ship was being duct-taped mid-flight, and no one at the helm knew how to land. Each time Brent scheduled an emergency all-hands, I knew he was about to announce something that would make investors foam and engineers cry. Last week's gem: we're pivoting to neurocommerce, thought-driven purchasing, the Amazon of the subconscious. No one asked what that meant. We just nodded and added it to the list of phrases to spin in the next press kit. But underneath my PR poker face was quietly assembling my own constellation of red flags, a spreadsheet titled Anomalies, timestamped audio recordings, draft press releases that never got published, photos of whiteboards from meetings we were told never happened, and one name kept popping up in internal threads: Camden Rowe, a regulatory attorney who supposedly left 6 months ago, but someone was still copying him on internal legal memos. Either a ghost had a corporate inbox or something worse. Then came the email that cemented it. Subject line: reshuffling liabilities pre-audit do not forward, sent from Brent's personal Gmail, copied to 3 board members. Attached, a slide deck showing projected growth graphs labeled as Q1 simulated. In the footer, confidential forward-looking metrics not yet realized. My blood went cold. That phrase, not yet realized, was code. Same one he used back when we covered up the layoffs in Phoenix by calling it a hybrid transition. This wasn't PR fluff. This was financial fiction. But I couldn't act yet, not openly. Brent was erratic, sure, but still powerful. He had dirt on nearly every exec, played golf with half the press pool, and could cry on cue in front of a camera. To the outside world, he was the Tony Stark of tech, visionary, charming, unhinged but lovable. To me, it was a liability in human form, a lawsuit wrapped in designer wool. I saved the email, archived the attachments, made a printout, and hid it inside an old marketing binder on my bookshelf titled Internal Alignment, 2019. No one touched the 2019 stuff. Too many fonts, too much shame. I started watching everything with new eyes. The startup fridge full of organic cold brew, sponsored by a hedge fund that also happened to own 3% of our shares. The HR director's sudden sabbatical. She'd reported discrepancies in payroll 6 weeks ago. The new intern who never used her last name and only took meetings in stairwells. Definitely either a whistleblower or an informant. And through it all, Brent kept smiling, kept tweeting, kept whispering in corners and calling it strategy. Me, I kept smiling too. Now it was the kind of smile you wear when you're waiting for the explosion, because you already know where the exits are. Her name was Marcy, and she'd been with the company longer than the office plants, back when we were just 10 people crammed into a WeWork, ordering sushi on a stolen credit card, and pretending beta testing meant crashing an app over mimosas. If anyone could read a room before it curdled, it was Marcy. She was sharp, cynical, data analyst with a spreadsheet for everything, including executives most likely to cry in Q4. She cornered me outside the bathroom like it was a mob movie. Low voice, eyes darting. "I know what you're doing," she said. I blinked. "Using the restroom? Don't be cute. You're snooping." Her mouth tightened. "I get it. Brent's a walking felony. But people who dig too deep here don't last. They get restructured, ghosted, offered a 6-month NDOD vacation in exchange for silence. I laughed too loudly and pretended not to flinch. I'm just making sure our messaging stays aligned. It's my job. She leaned in. You're not the first to chase the truth here. Just promise me you'll at least pretend you're not trying to blow up the building. Then she walked off like she hadn't just handed me a riddle wrapped in a resignation letter. That night, I stood over my kitchen sink, staring at a half-eaten lean cuisine and thinking about quitting. Just bailing. Writing one of those LinkedIn posts where you pretend burnout was a spiritual awakening and say things like, on to my next adventure, while drinking Pinot out of a novelty mug that says #bossbitch. I even opened the company offboarding portal, typed involuntary resignation, then stared at the blinking cursor for a full 5 minutes. But quitting would just bury everything. Rent would keep spinning. The shareholders would keep clapping. The intern named Kayla would probably be promoted to VP of Spiritual Strategy and start handing out ayahuasca in board meetings. No, I couldn't walk away. Not now. Not when I'd seen the wires behind the curtain and smelled the smoke in the server room. I had the emails, the audio, the Slack screenshots with timestamps. Hell, I had receipts on things the legal team didn't even know they'd buried. If I left now, someone else would take the fall, and it wouldn't be Brent. So I went back to work the next morning with a pumpkin spice latte and a perfectly ironed mask. I smiled through the 9 a.m. check-in, where Brent announced we were reimagining accountability by removing quarterly reviews. I applauded when he unveiled our new slogan, Feel the Disruption, which sounded like something you'd see in a colonoscopy ad. I took notes on his plan to launch NeuroBand in emerging markets where he claimed people are more open to innovation, which was code for, let's dump it in countries with less regulation. Every meeting I nodded, every lie I co-signed. I even pitched a few taglines, because you deserve more than silence. Think louder, let your wrist do the talking. And then, behind the scenes, I built the archive, a fortress of facts. Every time I heard something off, I logged it. Brent slipped up and said, if the press finds out about Camden, we're cooked. I saved the audio from my watch's memo app. When the finance team sent Q2 Real vs. Q2 public files to the wrong thread, I backed them up to 2 separate drives, one hidden inside a cosmetics bag labeled eyeliner tips. I wasn't just documenting, I was choreographing the collapse. But God, it was exhausting. Pretending to laugh at his jokes, pretending not to notice that HR had stopped onboarding and started offboarding, quietly, one by one, employees disappearing like unpaid invoices. I felt like I was sleepwalking through a minefield. Every all hands was a hostage video. Every Slack message from Brent Reed like a poorly coded threat disguised as a motivational quote. Sometimes vision requires blood, he posted one morning. 30 people reacted with fire. RC stopped making eye contact with me. I knew why. She thought I was next. Hell, maybe I was, but what choice did I have? Let Brent tank the company and pin it on some junior analyst who misspelled liabilities in a quarterly memo? No, I was the comms director. I knew how to shape a story, how to time a reveal, how to let a lie bake long enough that when you cracked it open, the stink knocked the roof off. So I kept showing up, kept building the bomb. I waited, because someday, maybe tomorrow, maybe next quarter, someone would point a camera at me and ask if I had anything to say. And when they did, I'd be ready. The email came in at 3:17 a.m. Subject line, get ready, he's going to blindside you. No sender name, no footer. Just a burner Gmail address and one sentence in the body. He plans to fire you live. Protect yourself. I didn't sleep after that. Instead, I stared out the window of my apartment, watching the city lights flicker like neurons misfiring, and felt something slow and molten curl in my gut. Not fear, not yet. Just the dull certainty that I was being herded toward a cliff, and the cameras were already rolling. The segment had been in the works for weeks. A full-on PR resurrection, Brent's idea of damage control. He called it the future is now, disruption and innovation in the wake of uncertainty, which is a fancy way of saying, we need the public to stop asking questions about why the product doesn't work and where the CFO went. It was a prime-time spot on GBC News, broadcast nationwide, hosted by Alina Navarro, sharp as a whip, with a reputation for skinning billionaires on air and making it look like a handshake. Brent, of course, was thrilled. She loves me, he said, pouring himself a protein shake with one hand and air punching with the other. Give her a few buzzwords, some tearjerker user stories, and we're golden. He'd asked me to be part of it. For optics, he said, people trust you. You're like the human version of a weighted blanket. I should have seen it sooner. The way he kept testing out dramatic phrases in the mirror, the over-rehearsed pauses, the suspicious quiet from legal. Brent wasn't planning a comeback. He was staging an execution. Mine. I stared at my laptop screen for a full 10 minutes, reading the anonymous email while my hands vibrated with caffeine and adrenaline. Then I got up, opened the closet, pulled out the locked case I kept behind a stack of old holiday decorations and 3 broken umbrella stands. Inside, the USB drive. Unassuming, black, tiny, but heavy with a year's worth of evidence, internal memos, audit fraud, doctored spreadsheets, voice recordings, screenshots of Slack messages, even a selfie Brent took in the server room with the caption, hiding the body's skull briefcase that he thought was edgy but read like a confession. It had always been a parachute. Now it was a weapon. The day of the interview felt like walking through a dream made of glass. Everything sharp, everything ready to crack. They sent a black SUV to pick us up. Brent insisted on riding together for synergy. He sat beside me scrolling his phone, uttering lines under his breath like a bad actor in a dinner theater production of Wolf of Wall Street. I just nodded, kept my smile glued on, and clutched my bag tighter. The USB was in an empty lipstick tube, right next to my backup, because of course I had a backup. I wasn't just a PR director, I was a doomsday prepper with a Wi-Fi connection. Backstage at the studio, the air reeked of foundation and stage fright. Brent was vibrating with performance energy, cracking his knuckles, fist bumping the makeup artist, telling the lighting crew to make sure my angles scream visionary. I stood in front of the green room mirror, fixing my hair with robotic precision, and caught my own eyes in the reflection. I looked calm, too calm, the kind of calm that comes before a detonation. A storm wearing mascara. My phone buzzed once in my purse. Another anonymous message. He's already cleared it with HR. Says you leaked investor memos. He'll say you're unstable. Be ready. I didn't respond. Instead, I took a slow breath, adjusted my blazer, and walked onto the stage. 3 chairs, 1 journalist, 2 company reps, 1 live feed. The cameras came up. The lights snapped on. And Brent Maddox turned to the nation with a smile made of polished teeth and calculated malice. Before we begin, he said, there's something I need to address. His voice was velvet. His eyes were fire. And I knew this was the moment I couldn't unlive. The moment the point of no return stopped being hypothetical and became now. So I smiled wider, folded my hands neatly over my lap, and waited. The lipstick tube in my purse felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. He had the stage, but I had the truth. Brent turned toward the camera like he'd rehearsed it in a dream. Jaw clenched, eyes misted, voice trembling just enough to register as emotionally burdened visionary. I never thought I'd have to say this, he began, the kind of line that always precedes a lie or a marriage proposal from someone holding a guitar. But integrity demands difficult choices. He turned to me like we were about to do a duet. Effective immediately, I'm terminating our communications director, Miss Alina Harper, for breaching confidentiality and leaking sensitive investor data. My name hit the floor like a brick. He didn't look at me, just at the camera, like I was already a ghost, or worse, irrelevant. This isn't easy. Alina's been a part of our journey since day one, but leadership means protecting the vision, and we cannot tolerate internal sabotage at a time when transparency matters most. Sabotage, sabotage. The word ricocheted inside my skull like a rubber bullet. I sat there, motionless, each syllable detaching my body from itself. Arms numb, cheeks hot, fingers twitching with the phantom need to write a press release about my own funeral. Then he leaned back in his chair, unbothered, smug, triumphant. And that's when Alina Navarro, the journalist, broke the script. She tilted her head, visibly stunned, and turned to me with eyebrows drawn and mic angled. Would you like to respond? A silence dropped so hard you could hear the cameraman stop breathing. Uncrossed my legs slowly, deliberately, reached into my bag, pulled out the lipstick, unscrewed the cap. The USB clicked into my palm like a loaded gun. I placed it on the table in front of Alina, the little red light blinking softly like a heartbeat. Yes, I said, my voice low but steady. Start here. Brent blinked. His jaw twitched. You could see the PR calculus scrambling behind his eyes. Fight or flight or deflect to synergy. Lena's fingers brushed the drive. She glanced at the producer. No one said cut. No one yelled go to break. Instead, she leaned in. What's on it? I met her eyes. Documents, audio, fraud, insider trades, board manipulation. Enough NDAs to wallpaper a mansion. Everything Brent's been hiding. Brent finally moved, jerking forward in his seat like a man realizing he left the stove on while committing a felony. This is slander, he snapped. She's making it up. None of this is a setup. She's bitter. She's unstable. You don't know what she's know, I said, interrupting him. But you do, you just didn't think I'd bring the receipts. He looked at the cameras for help. There was none. Just lenses blinking, watching, capturing. Alina turned back to her crew. We'll have our legal team review the contents, she said calmly, slipping the USB into her blazer. But we'll air what's verifiable. Brent stood, knocking his mic loose. I want to speak to your producers. This is outrageous. This is unethical. Alina didn't even look at him. Security's outside the door if you'd like to file a complaint. I stayed seated, still, cold. Inside, my nerves were screaming, my hands were wet, my knees made of jelly. But on the outside, composed rage, quiet vindication. I watched as Brent stormed off the set like a child who just realized monopoly doesn't end with real money. I watched Alina signal the segment closed with a single, wordless nod to the control booth. And then I watched the world explode. By the time I got back to the green room, #Justice for Harper was trending on Twitter. Clips of Brent's meltdown were already looped on news blogs, TikToks, Reddit threads. Some genius overlaid it with violin music. Another synced it with the Titanic theme. The messages started pouring in. Anonymous thank yous. Knew something was wrong, you just confirmed everything. I worked there. You're a hero. And then, Brent's legal team, a cease and desist, a formal request for return of proprietary company materials. An internal memo leaked to Buzz News claiming I'd hacked his personal accounts. But it was too late. The world had seen it. And somewhere in a studio server room, a drive was being copied, examined, transcribed. Everything I'd spent months collecting was finally breathing daylight. Brent had thrown a match, but I brought the gasoline. It started like a slow drumbeat in the background, news tickers, push notifications, podcasts whispering my name between ads for meal kits and VPNs. Then it roared. By the next morning, Tech Forward dropped a 12-page breakdown of the USB contents. Headline, NeuroCorp's Neural Nightmare. Leaks reveal culture of lies. Linked internal memos showing Brent instructing legal to sanitize quarterly filings. A spreadsheet marked Forecast V. Fiction laid out doctored projections, color-coded like a birthday party for white-collar crime. One whistleblower testimony, recorded months before I ever hit backup, claimed their severance package required a clause that said they could never mention Brent's name in any verbal, written, or interpretive dance format. By noon, Business Today confirmed it. Stock manipulation, employee mistreatment, a strategic realignment program that turned out to be a cover for forced resignations tied to non-disclosure payouts. There were Slack messages where senior staff openly joked about compliance being for peasants and HR memos titled Managing Dissent without admitting fault. And there I was, sitting in my living room, still in yesterday's blazer, watching Brent's empire crumble on a 60-inch flat screen I'd bought during our IPO celebration. The moment it all tipped was when Bloomline's political desk picked up the insider trading angle. Turns out one of Brent's silent board members had been feeding pre-release financials to a hedge fund whose founder was his college roommate and one of the firm's biggest outside investors. The evidence? A blurry screenshot of a WhatsApp conversation from a board dinner. Brent's contact name, Mr. Big Payout Bottle with Popping Cork. The last message, buy low before the Q3 magic. That night, Brent disappeared. I don't mean he resigned or made a statement. I mean he vanished. No public comment. No Instagram posts. The CEO of one of the most hyped tech companies in the country ghosted the world like a bad Tinder date. In his place, the company's official PR team, people I used to manage, humbled to control the narrative. Their first statement called it a coordinated smear campaign by a disgruntled former employee. Their second walked that back. Their third claimed Brent was taking time to reflect. The fourth came 2 days later, after a shareholder filed a class action suit. They promised a full internal review, which is corporate for we're shitting ourselves, but trying to sound mature. Meanwhile, I was drowning in messages, anonymous emails with subject lines like "Be careful who you trust, and they're watching you." A burner phone texted me coordinates once, just coordinates. Another said, "You're brave, don't stop, but don't sleep too deep either." Then came the letter. A thick white envelope slid under my apartment door, no return address. Inside, a cease and desist from NeuroCorp's outside counsel, accusing me of industrial espionage, theft of intellectual property, defamation with malicious intent. The kicker, it included a draft lawsuit, 68 pages of legal vomit trying to paint me as an unhinged saboteur who fabricated documents using deepfake technologies. They even cited my use of VPNs as suspicious behavior. But it wasn't just threats. Inside the envelope was also a photocopy of a check, $2.5 million, made out to me, stamped with a post-it that read, "You can walk away now." I stared at it for a long time. $2.5 million could buy silence, could erase a year of panic, paranoia, and fake smiles, could buy a house with a yard and a porch and no lawyers breathing down your neck. But I'd already crossed that line. This wasn't revenge anymore. It wasn't about proving Brent wrong or getting even with the board that ghosted me after I made the millions. It wasn't even about my job. It was about all the people he'd buried beneath buzzwords and bonuses. The ones who'd been gaslit, bought off, silenced. The ones who trusted HR until HR handed them an NDA with a smile. They didn't get a camera or a microphone. I did. I shredded the check. And the next day, emailed the entire archive to a federal regulatory task force whose director I'd once ghostwritten a speech for back when ethics were still fashionable. Then I opened my notes app, started a new folder, labeled it Endgame. The first message came from a Burner Proton mail account with the subject line, "I owe you a drink or a kidney." Inside was a name I hadn't read in over a year, Rachel K., former product manager, fired without warning after calling out discrepancies in the prototype reports. Everyone assumed she'd taken a payout and disappeared. But here she was, alive, angry, and armed with receipts. "Thought I was crazy," she wrote. "They told me to see a therapist and gave me a month's severance. You proved I wasn't imagining the rot." Then came a trickle, then a stream, then a goddamn flood. Former employees, contractors, one former C-suite exec who sent me a single sentence. "You did what I couldn't. Let me help." They weren't trying to be heroes. Most of them were just trying to sleep again, to stop checking over their shoulders, to feel like they hadn't been complicit just by collecting a paycheck. We formed a quiet channel, encrypted, invite-only, with names stripped down to initials and avatars blurred like a witness protection program made in Slack. We called it the basement, place where the bodies Brent buried could finally talk back. One woman uploaded a signed NDA with a clause that barred her from disparaging NeuroCorp or its leadership in any media, verbal, digital, written, or performance art format. Her story: Brent's team erased her user research when it showed the product increased anxiety in beta testers. He said the data was emotionally contagious. Like fear was a design flaw. Another shared an email chain where an internal ethics complaint was rerouted to marketing instead of legal. The subject line: containment. And then, somehow, the podcast invite came. It was from The Whistle Room, a cult hit podcast run by a former DOJ investigator turned media rogue. They were known for disguising voices and turning corporate horror stories into mini-audio thrillers. Think Serial, but with more NDAs and suppressed memos. They wanted me, or rather, an anonymous former executive at the center of a major tech leak. I said yes, with conditions. They modulated my voice until I sounded like a haunted fax machine, called me Harper to protect my full name, gave me a list of topics I could avoid if it felt too raw. I gave them everything anyway. When the episode dropped, it lit a match under an already burning house. Overnight, it climbed the charts. Reddit threads spun conspiracy maps. TikTokers acted out scenes from the story like it was true crime theater. And in the midst of it all, Brent's name trended with the kind of gravity usually reserved for politicians caught in hotel rooms with lobbyists and livestock. And right on cue, another letter. This time from a boutique law firm out of New York that specialized in dispute minimization. That's code for legal hush puppies. Offered me a resolution package in exchange for a permanent silence clause. The number? $5 million, tax-free, paid offshore. The note came with a single line typed in bold. "This is your last chance to walk away intact." I laughed out loud. Then I printed the letter, stuffed it in a Ziploc bag, and mailed it anonymously to one of the journalists who'd been digging into NeuroCorp's shadow contracts. Let them have fun with it. But the paranoia never left. Every Uber ride, I checked the license plate twice. My webcam stayed taped. I took the long way home even when I had nothing to hide. Because if there's one thing I learned from Brent's world, it's that money protects rot, and rot knows how to retaliate. Still, the fear didn't own me. Not anymore. What replaced it was a strange, simmering calm. Not peace. Not quite. More like clarity with sharp edges. I wasn't done. Not even close. I started building the final package. A perfectly timed truth bomb. Not just for headlines, but for regulators, attorneys general, the IRS, the SEC, hell, maybe even Congress if it came to that. I called it the Scorch folder. Everything that hadn't yet gone public. The stuff too volatile, too raw, too uncorroborated when I first gathered it. I cleaned it, verified it, watermarked every page with invisible tracers in case someone tried to leak it before I did. This wasn't just about collapsing Brent's image anymore. It was about cutting the roots so nothing like this could grow back. And the final piece, still buried in the archive, untouched, untold. The one file Brent feared the most. I wasn't ready to open it yet, but I would be. The printer made a noise like it was dying slowly, groaning with every page as it spit out the final copies of the archive. 3 thick manila envelopes, sealed and labeled with shaky hands. Not because I was scared, no. Because I hadn't slept in 36 hours, and I could feel the pressure behind my eyes like a second heartbeat. Inside those envelopes, the full weight of NeuroCorp's rot. A curated apocalypse. Dozens of internal documents, emails, audio transcriptions, financial spreadsheets doctored so sloppily, they might as well have come with a laugh track. I included a cover sheet with a brief summary and a polite postscript. You might want to call your lawyers before you read this. Envelope 1, addressed to the Federal Securities and Exchange Commission, care of a contact who once owed me a favor from a conference in D.C. where I saved his career with a single line of spin. Envelope 2, a venture firm called Lantry Capital, one of Brent's earliest investors, whose founder had grown unusually quiet since the scandal started. Quiet like someone trying to get their money out before the feds noticed. Envelope 3, Carla Mendoza, investigative journalist, Pulitzer finalist, and the only person to ever publish a real exposé on Brent's early company, before he sued her publisher into silence and tried to ruin her marriage with a tabloid leak. I dropped them at 3 separate post offices across the city. No digital trail, no signatures, no room for interference. Then I went home, unplugged my router, and opened the one file I hadn't dared to look at since I downloaded it months ago. The folder was called Wellspring. It had come from a shared drive someone accidentally left open for 12 minutes during a server migration. Long enough for me to scrape what I needed, too risky to ever look at on a work machine. Inside, a single spreadsheet. The first tab was labeled Compliance Schedule. The second, Forecast Revisions. The third was what stopped me cold. Center Contacts Protected Access Only. I clicked. The sheet opened like a coffin lid. Names, meeting dates, donation amounts, wire transfer logs, flight itineraries, offshore wire instructions disguised as consulting retainers. And there, in bold, sent, Mark Ryland PAC contributions, via Apex holding /options activity prequeue, 1 leak a sitting senator. 1 with a seat on the Commerce Committee. 1 who had publicly praised Brent's company in a televised session as a beacon of responsible innovation. 1 who, according to this file, had been tipped off on NeuroCorp's fake earnings ahead of every single quarterly drop. And the kicker, a signed note. Digital but verified. Let's make sure this drop doesn't spook the markets. I'll steer the committee toward crypto instead. Your sector can recover after the report. Ryland, bought, coached, complicit. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen as if it would blink first. My coffee was ice cold. My hands were limp. But my heart was an engine again. I wasn't just burning Brent anymore. I was about to torch the bridge between tech and politics that protected him all this time. I created a new USB. This one different, unmarked, hidden inside a replacement laptop charger I'd rigged with a slide-out casing. Paranoid? Maybe. But if they were watching, I wanted them watching the wrong things. The drop would be surgical. First, I scheduled 3 media leaks, staggered by time zone. 1 to Carla, who now had her publisher's full backing. 1 to a financial crime analyst on YouTube with 500,000 subscribers and a vendetta against corporate corruption. And 1 to a wire service under embargo, timed to go live 90 seconds after the next NeuroCorp quarterly press event. I labeled the campaign file Dead Orbit, because once this thing launched, There was no pulling it back. As I queued the uploads, encrypted the drive, and booked a flight out of the city under a friend's name, I felt it again. Raw electric exhaustion. Not relief, not victory, but a grim clarity. This wouldn't fix the system. It wouldn't undo the careers crushed or the lies sold in boardrooms like timeshares, but it would expose them. Brent, Ryland, the enablers, the architects, all of them. By this time tomorrow, the fuse would be gone, and the explosion would belong to the world. Same studio, same lights. Same producer pretending not to recognize me. Different energy. There was no makeup team this time. No Brent pacing with cologne thick enough to kill a cactus. Just Alina Navarro, straightening her blazer, earpiece in, looking at me like she knew this was the kind of night that breaks anchors or makes legends. 3 minutes, the floor manager said. We're live coast to coast. Alina turned to me, voice low. You sure you don't want to be on camera? I shook my head. Let the facts speak. That's all anyone ever needed. She nodded. Let's ruin some powerful men. The segment started with a soft piano sting. Somber, serious. No flashy intro, no tech glitz, just Alina. And then the words, this network has independently verified a series of documents provided months ago by a former executive detailing extensive fraud, manipulation, and illegal activity at one of the country's most celebrated tech firms. Boom. Cut to graphics. Slide 1, falsified revenue charts. Slide 2, the compliance schedule with missing audit windows. Slide 3, the insider trading spreadsheet connecting NeuroCorp's executive board to Senator Mark Ryland. When Alina read his name aloud, I felt the country exhale. They ran the footage next. Brent in Marbella, dragging a Louis Vuitton roller bag through a private airport terminal in socks, flanked by 2 assistants trying to pretend it wasn't happening. TMZ had beat the feds by 15 minutes. The clip cut right before the agents caught him on the tarmac. Alina didn't blink. Mr. Maddox is now in federal custody, facing charges including securities fraud, obstruction, and conspiracy to defraud investors. The Justice Department has also opened an ethics inquiry into Senator Ryland, following evidence of coordinated trading activity. The broadcast showed real-time stock data, NeuroCorp's valuation plummeting like an elevator with the wires cut. Their name, once plastered across magazine covers and TED talk intros, flashing red on every ticker. In the corner of the screen, a split feed, protesters outside NeuroCorp's HQ, former employees crying in disbelief, shareholders screaming into phones. One man holding a cardboard sign that read, "She warned you." I sat in the green room alone, watching history swallow itself. No cheers, no clapping, no dramatic music swells, just the slow, inevitable gravity of consequences finally landing. I left before the cameras cut, took the back exit. No need for an encore. These days, I don't do crisis PR, I don't write spin, I don't clean messes I didn't make. I work in the shadows, quietly advising the people who still believe ethics matter. Whistleblowers, investigators, a few stubborn regulators who haven't been bought yet. I sit on no boards. My name is scrubbed from press lists. The only thing I endorse now is the truth. Once a month, I still get an email from some junior exec asking if I'd consult on a tricky corporate situation. They usually lead with compliments, how I handled the NeuroCorp crisis with such poise. I never reply. I don't want applause. I want a world where someone like Brent doesn't make it past his second lie. Last night, I opened the archive one final time. Folder after folder, labeled in shorthand only I understood, Wellspring, Dead Orbit, Scorch folder, all of it still intact, untouched. I hovered over the delete key, paused, then I dragged the entire archive into the trash, clicked empty bin, watched the progress bar crawl to completion. Then I closed the laptop. No dramatics, no music, just the soft click of the lid shutting. And then I stood up, took a breath, and walked into the night. Appreciate you sticking around, you wise old rebels. Smash that subscribe button, or this fossil might just cause another epic fiasco.